All right, today we're tackling a big one, the epic story of the world's second largest country. We're going to journey through thousands of years, from the very first people who walked across a long-vanished land bridge, through the clash of massive empires, and right up to the modern multicultural nation we know today. So, let's dive in.
First things first, to even begin to get your head around Canada, you've got to appreciate its size. We're talking 3.8 million square miles, stretching across 6 time zones. This isn't just one landscape, it's a collection of completely different worlds, from the unbelievable Rocky Mountains to the frozen Arctic tundra. And it's this massive, sprawling geography that really set the stage for the incredibly diverse human story that was about to unfold.
Now, long before any European ships even knew this place existed, this land was already home to complex and thriving societies. So the story of Canada doesn't start with some maps and flags in the 1500s. No, it begins thousands of years earlier with the continent's very first peoples. So where does this story really begin? Well, you have to go back about 16,000 years, when people migrated from Siberia across a land bridge we now call Beringia. But the real game changer, that came 11,000 years ago. As the colossal ice sheets from the last ice age finally started to melt and retreat, they basically opened up the entire continent, allowing people to move south and populate this vast territory that would one day become Canada. And this migration didn't just create one single culture. Oh no. It led to this incredible, rich tapestry of them. Over in the east, you had the Algonquian and Iroquoian peoples. Out on the prairies, nomadic Cree-speaking groups built their entire lives around following the massive bison herds. Way out west, you had complex societies of Naden and Salishan-speaking peoples thriving on the abundance of salmon and cedar. And then way up in the far north, the totally distinct Inuit people mastered life in the harsh, beautiful Arctic.
Okay, so the next chapter in our story. This is where everything changes, profoundly and permanently. It's the moment when the old world and the new began a long, and let's be honest, often very difficult relationship that would reshape this continent forever. Okay, here's a mind-blowing fact about Canadian history for you. The first European contact here actually happened almost 500 years before Columbus. Seriously, around the year 1000, the Viking explorer Leif Erikson landed and even set up a settlement. But it was just too far from home to last, and it was soon abandoned. And then, for half a millennium, knowledge of this continent just faded away in Europe. That is, until an Italian guy named John Cabot, sailing for England, showed up in 1497, kicking off a brand new and permanent age of exploration.
Right, so what about the name Canada itself? Where did that come from? Well, in 1544, the French explorer Jacques Cartier was sailing up the St. Lawrence River. He asked the local Iroquoian people what this area was called. They used their word for village, which was Kanata. Cartier just kind of ran with it and started using it for the whole territory. And just like that, Canada was on the map. For a while there, the European presence was kind of hit or miss, some fishermen here, fur traders there. But the real turning point, the moment it all got serious, was in 1608 with a man named Samuel de Champlain. He founded Quebec City, not as some temporary camp, but as a permanent settlement, the capital of a new French empire in North America he called New France. This was the permanent foothold. So now you've got a permanent French presence, and you've got growing British interest. You can probably see where this is going, right? A collision course was set. The next century would be defined by this massive continent-spanning rivalry between Europe's two biggest superpowers. And the scale of what they were fighting over, it was just immense. France controlled the major inland highways, the St. Lawrence River, the Great Lakes, the Mississippi. It was this huge arc of influence. Britain, meanwhile, had the incredibly profitable Hudson Bay fur trade up north, and all those populous colonies dotting the eastern coast. With ambitions that big, overlapping, conflict wasn't just likely, it was absolutely inevitable.
And that inevitable conflict? Well, it finally exploded in what was basically the first real world war. The part fought in North America, the 7 Years' War, was the final showdown. The absolute turning point was the Battle of the Plains of Abraham in 1759, where British forces took Quebec City. By 1763, it was all over. France was defeated and had to give up its claims to mainland North America. But here's the thing. The most important decision, the one that really shaped everything, came after the war was over. Instead of trying to crush the French-speaking population, the British made a very practical choice. They let them keep their language, their Catholic religion, and their legal traditions.
This one single act of political smarts became the very bedrock of Canada's modern bilingual and bicultural identity. It's huge.
All right, so Canada is now under British rule, but it's not a country yet. Not really. It's still just a bunch of separate colonies. The next part of our story is all about how these different pieces started to come together to forge a brand new nation.
You know what really pushed them towards unity? The War of 1812. The young United States invaded, thinking they could just absorb Canada. Well, the war ended in a draw, but the psychological impact was massive. It really created a distinct Canadian identity, separate from the US. And ironically, this war set the stage for what is now the world's longest undefended border. Kind of funny how that worked out. Becoming a single country, though, it didn't happen overnight. It was a step-by-step process. First, you had some rebellions in the 1830s that sparked calls for more democracy. Then, by the 1860s, colonial leaders, partly because they were worried about American expansion and partly because they wanted a stronger economy, started seriously negotiating a deal to unite all the different colonies into one nation. And all that work, all that negotiation, it all led to this one date. On July 1st, 1867, the British North America Act went into effect. The Dominion of Canada was born, a new self-governing country, still part of the British Empire, but on its own path. But here's the catch. This new country was really just in the East. The next huge challenge was to stitch it together from coast to coast. But this westward expansion wasn't easy. It came at a cost, leading to conflict with the Métis people who already called the prairies home. To tie it all together and bring British Columbia into the fold, the government took on a truly monumental task, building the Canadian Pacific Railway, which was finally finished in 1885. All right, let's jump into the 20th century, because this is when Canada really comes into its own, steps onto the world stage, and forges the independent modern identity it has today. Man, the 20th century was just a whirlwind. So much happened. World War I forged a real sense of national pride, but it also created deep divisions between French and English Canadians at home. From there, it was a steady march to full independence. In 1931, the Statute of Westminster granted almost total political freedom. Then, in 1965, boom, the iconic maple leaf flag, a uniquely Canadian symbol. And the final step came in 1982, when the Constitution was brought home, severing the last legal ties to the British Parliament. So after the wars, Canada really got down to the business of building the modern country we know today. It literally completed its map when Newfoundland joined as a 10th province. It built a social safety net, including its famous universal healthcare system, and while it formed really tight security partnerships with the United States, it also had to face these profound internal challenges to its own unity, especially from the Quebec independence movement. And that brings us to something really interesting about modern Canada. Even after becoming a fully independent country, the nation chose to keep this symbolic link to its past. It's still a constitutional monarchy. That means that while Canada is a completely sovereign democracy that makes all its own decisions, the British monarch is still the official, though ceremonial, head of state. So when you look at this whole story, we're left with one big thought. The entire history of Canada is really a story about navigating difference between Indigenous peoples and newcomers, between French and English empires, between different regions and a national government. This long journey of compromise leaves us with a really powerful question. How does any nation build an identity not by trying to erase all its differences, but by actually embracing them?